I call the Board of Assessors meeting to order at 9 a.m. on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. Let the record show that present from the board are Robert Early, Paul Bergeron, and myself, Daniel Hansberry. The first order of business of the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the public session of the Board of Assessors meeting held on Thursday, May 19th, 2022, accept them and place them on file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any errors or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the non-public meeting minutes of the Board of Assessors meeting from Thursday, May 19th, 2022, accept them and place them on file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any errors or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. At this time, I will recognize Vision Government Solutions for an update on the ongoing revaluation that's taking place in the city.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mike Torello with Vision. I have June Perry with me. Yeah, so we're moving along well. We are right now at the final phase of the process of the data collection, which is just the callbacks. All the initial inspections have been completed. And we're going to wrap up the callback appointments this month. We're doing the data entry and capturing of the new images, and that continues. And that'll be a little bit behind that work that we're doing now with the appointments, but they're pretty close timing-wise. The commercial, industrial, exempt, and field review inspections, field inspections, drive-bys have been completed. Those are now currently being data entered into the system. We have set up and are ready to start to enter in the income and expense forms that we sent out to the taxpayers. We are now able to work in the live file, so we'll be entering in the income and expense in the next week or two, and then we'll start to set the commercial rates this month. That will entail commercial construction rates and land and income, rents, vacancies, expenses, and capitalization rates. We've already done a detailed review of secondary data, surveys of capitalization rates, surveys of market rents and vacancies and expenses to complement the income and expense forms we'll have. So we'll start to set those rates, and then in July, we'll start to reconcile those cost and income and sales to the final values for the commercials. To have those done sometime in early August for review. The residential sales analysis was preliminarily set up to be approximately at 100% of value, adjusting the land and the buildings up in approximately the 40% range based on the starting point of 70%. We have those with lower CODs right now reasonably set up, and we ran those cards, and in February we started doing the, last month we started doing the field review. So we're about a third completed. We plan to get that done mid-July, and then we'll do another analysis from the changes in the neighborhood delineations we've set up and get the final analysis done close to the end of July, early August for review to get approval of these rates from the board, and then to set up letters going out for the hearings that will follow in August and September. And then we'll finalize the project at the end of September. So things are going well. We're getting great assistance from the assessor's office, and we are on a continuous basis keeping up with them, giving status reports to the BTLA and to the DRA, and I think things are going pretty well.
Questions for Mr. Torello?
I don't have any.
Mr. Trollam, you had, did you say it's only callbacks that you're doing now on residential properties, or did I not hear you correctly?
Yes, the appointments, call them appointments, but they're the callbacks, right? Same thing. Yeah, we're doing those, and I think, June, we're in the last ward. June, you're on mute.
Yes, we're in the last 3 wards. So pretty much the calls that are coming in have stopped. Now it's just a matter of just finalizing the appointments. We get a few here and there, but we're on wards 7, 8, and 9. We'll be done by the end of this month.
Thank you. And to go back, Mr. Trollam, something you said, if I understood correctly, you're using 70%, the properties are valued at 70%, and it looks like the adjustment is going to be 40% on that 70% of value. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, because if you just divide 100 by 70, you're gonna see the math in the 40 range. It's not, nothing's exact, and not that every property obviously would be like that. This isn't a factoring. Ranges of increases are gonna vary by class, but for the residentials, condos, they're gonna be in that range. We're not sure of the commercials yet until we look at get all the information in and look at the income approach and the sales that we have and the cost approach. It's a little easier to see where we are with the residential because we have the sales, so we're able to look at the starting point that we sent to you early. If you recall, that was around 70%. So I see, like Manchester and Salem and the other communities from last year, similar increases in your community, which were in the 40 to 45% range on average. But different neighborhoods and different styles will come in at different ranges depending on what the market tells us.
I've been following the sales, I mean, nothing scientific, but my general area probably within a half mile to 3/4 of a mile of my house. And there's a lot of properties that are assessed. The assessed value is between $250,000 and $300,000. And the most recent sale that I saw was a week ago Saturday. That house sold for 74.52% above assessed value. Is that typical of houses in that price range of $250,000 to $300,000, or would that be an outlier?
I lost you. I can't hear you with your, can you speak up a little bit? I have
Yeah. I've been kind of informally following the sales in my area, probably within a half mile to 3/4 of a mile of my house. And there's a lot of properties that are assessed at $500,000 to $300,000. And the most recent sale was in the...
Have them speak into the mic. Thank you.
The most recent sale was a week ago Saturday, and that house sold for 74.52% of assessed value. Is that an outlier, or is that more typical of the houses that are currently assessed for between $250,000 and $300,000?
You mean it was only 74% of the assessed value?
No, so you're taking the value, which was, I think it was, what, 286.5. You're multiplying that by 1.7452, and the house sold for $500,000. Is that typical of what's happening for houses in that price range, or would that be an outlier?
Yeah, we can't look at one sale, and we don't know if it's qualified and so forth. There will be areas that will be higher than 5%, and then there'll be areas that are lower. Will there be some properties that may go up 50 or 60%? Sure, if that group of properties have the sales that support that. So when I say the ratio, it's a median of, 1,000, like many sales. So the median is the midpoint of a range. So there'll be ranges above it, there'll be ranges below it. So there's no way I could tell you with one sale that you picked out how that relates to that range.
No, but I'm saying what I'm seeing, that house was the last one, but the sales that are occurring in that area of the city, that's typical of the way they've gone up. The houses that are in the $250,000 to $300,000 range have gone up dramatically relative to their assessed value.
They all have, yeah. And some entry-level, lower ones might go up more than larger ones. There's been a demand for the entry-level housing and condos. So they could be on the higher range of what those medians are that we saw at the starting point when we ran sales from 4.1 to 4.1, 21 to 22.
And then a week ago Sunday in the Globe, there was an article about real estate. They were interviewing somebody in the industry, and the person was saying that the increase in the interest rates at this point is having very little impact on sales, that a house is typically on the market for 2 weeks, and there are still competitive bids coming in for those properties. Is that what you're hearing?
That's what I'm seeing, yeah. See, you gotta realize that, let's look back at the history of interest rates just quickly. You know, up to 7, 8, 9 years ago, even 10, you know, an interest rate of 6 to 8% was probably like average. If we go way back into the 70s and 80s, they were 18 to 20%. This is, these rates that we had were like pre-1950 after World War II, where they were giving money away, ratios. They were just unsustainable. At getting an interest rate of 2 or 3% for a home. That's absurd, right? I mean, that's historic. For them now to be 4.5% to 5% is still on the low end. However, eventually, if they continue to go up, people don't look at the sale price as much as what their payment will be. So as interest rates go up, their payments go up. I mean, people look at their budget and say, I can buy this. So as interest rates drop, they would have the same payment that they would have when it was 5 or 6% when the sale price was higher. So a lot of it was stimulated by the interest rates going so low. And then, of course, people still wanted to buy. COVID also enhanced that, as the sellers were wary of people coming into their homes because of COVID, and then that lowered the supply. So I'm seeing supply start to get up a little bit more in certain areas. I'm seeing more signs as we drive around. That's a sign right there. But that's going to take some time, and it depends on how long we go with the feds and how high they go. So I was just teaching a class not long ago, and I was doing an analysis on this, and I said the same thing, that I don't think at 4.5% to 5% it's going to affect things as much as once it gets kind of over 7. 6 or 7 is, I think, is going to start to be a little bit more of a breaking point where people just won't be able to afford it, even if they want it. And that's why a lot of people are going for smaller housing stock and entry level, because they can afford that more so than the larger homes. It's also demographics. Over the last few years, there's been so many baby boomers, which is a large demographic compared to the other millennials, XYZ generations, retiring and downsizing and leaving that inventory of larger homes. I see it all the time. Unfortunately, the lower priced homes are going up at a higher rate than the larger homes, because there's just not as much demand for them. So those will be things that we'll see and lay out once we finalize. We'll run studies, old to new, by style and by neighborhood, and so we can see which ones are, you know, going up more than the average or less than the average.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
No.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, nice chatting with you.
Same
Thank
here.
you.
All right, Director Kleiner?
Good morning. Well, going right off of Vision's update, we wanted to give you an update ourselves. There had been some questions submitted to the board at the last meeting and then again via email. So we wanted to give the answers to those questions. So the last day of sales that will be captured, it's in the full revaluation contract with Vision. It's April 1, 2022. The measure and list signed contract calls for the final assessment value to be released on or before September 1st, 2022. As written, that is correct. That was what the contract said. As of yesterday, Vision and the city reached the agreement on an amendment to that contract. The amendment was reviewed by legal, and we submitted it to the New Hampshire Department of Revenue yesterday for their consideration. They do have the statutory authority to approve it or deny it. So we will bring that back and inform the board when one of those has happened. But in essence, what that amendment does is it pushes the date out by 30 days, everything that would have happened in June. So as Mr. Torello indicated, they're working on the income and expense statements, and they're doing a lot with the commercial properties, which would have normally been completed right about, the end of June. It pushes that out. And so in the memo that I gave you, there is a draft of what the new proposed schedule would be. Again, this remains a draft until it's approved by the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. But you'll see that commercial study of the market rents and the expenses and all that will now be done the end of June instead of the beginning of June. And the field review will be done the end of July.
And why doesn't it go to the very last day of July? Why are you dropping a day off?
Yeah. Good point. It's just the date when we were looking at the calendar that we didn't want to go more than 30 days, so we added 30 days to each of the tasks for completion. So in essence, what you would have saw for the informal hearings was for them to really be more the mid-July into the middle of August, and now that's going to really be the end of August into September. And then the completion date, instead of 9/1, will be 10/1. Now, we knew at the very beginning, that we wanted to set a 9/1 date for the reval to be completed. Many reasons you do that. The MS1 is due to the state on October 1. But it also provided us a buffer. And we knew that if we got into a situation where either data collection or there was any issues within the city that we needed to extend it, that 30 days was going to be our buffer. And now we're asking to use that. And there's many reasons. So, we've done very well, and although COVID has impacted us going into some homes, it also has caused staff shortages. People get COVID, they're out, there's lost time, there's lost production. So COVID has caused more impact to the revaluation process than just us not being able to enter homes. With that, there's also this is the first revaluation that we are handling on AP5, right? So prior to that, it all would have been done on the old software. And so working with Vision, working with Patriot, we've made some adjustments and figured out the best way to utilize the new software for what Vision needs to do. And then thirdly, I would be remiss not to say that the impact of losing our chief assessor. And I think this month has been extremely tough for the department. Mr. Vincent was extremely talented, and we've certainly all felt his loss within the department. The staff is doing tremendous to pick up and do what we can, but you can't say that that doesn't have an impact on the revaluation process, although we wish him well on his retirement. So we'll let the board know as soon as we have information from the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. The other question that was given or submitted to the board was around the EYB. For people who don't know what the EYB is, it's effective year built. The contract does talk about removal of the reliance on the EYB for depreciation. And the question is, were we doing that? Yep, the contract calls for it, and the EYB has been removed. To say that, there's a lot of work that goes in after that. So when you do this, it's even more important to make sure that you have the other data correct. So Vision continues to analyze and update the CAMA, oh, I can't even say it.
CAMA.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. And they are in the live system, and they're working through that, but they will be moving to a table-driven depreciation schedule. The next question is really about, can Vision determine the shift in tax burden and what it will be for residential properties? Final values will be delivered October 1st. Informal hearings with changes to the individual properties will be, mailed somewhere around August 17th. And each property owner is going to receive their notice, and they're going to have time to discuss those values with Vision. And these are the dates if it's approved. Prior to that, there is going to be very little communication, and just for the reasons that were indicated to you. The last thing that you want to do is make blanket statements or generalizations. The data is the data, and we need to wait for Vision to work through their process. It's not a matter of not wanting to share the data. It's a matter of the data not being in a state where it should be shared. So prior to informal hearings, you will not see a lot of conversation about generalization of where properties will be. So the third is, we had brought a contract to finance for a contract that we did with Esri for a revaluation support in an equitable property value tool. There's actually a few tools in that set. There's an internal tool that will be used by the assessors. There's an external tool which will be available to the residents. And then there's what they call this kind of tax calculator and set of other data. That project has started. We've met several times with Esri's project development team, Their consultants have access to the initial data that they need. Obviously, it's not the final data. No one has that yet. But they can start building Nashua's model, and they have started to do that. So that contract remains on schedule, and with the amendment to the revaluation contract, it gives Esri a little bit more time, although we expect that they may have that ready to go a little prior to when the division needs it for the hearings. And lastly, we sent out a update on the Assessor's property record portal, which is the DocuWare system. And where that is, it is live. You can go to the assessing website, and it's called the Assessor's Property Record Portal. It's on the left-hand side down at the bottom. We did report to the Board of Aldermen last Wednesday during budget review of the number of documents that we had in or rated public, which means the public can access them, and the number of files which still need review by our staff. When we say review by our staff, there may be nothing on there that needs to be redacted, but there may be something. And so that's a review. The other day, well, since last Wednesday, and most of this was last Friday because we've had holidays in the way, we reviewed over 15,000 documents one day. I mean, it's that quick. It's, you may get into documents later where it does require a lot more thought and redaction, and but so far it's been very quick, and we're happy with that. So when we reported to the aldermen, there was just shy of 400,000 files in total, and now we're actually up over 414,000. The reason for that is Inception is still adding documents. We have now been taught and trained how to add documents, so the staff can add documents to that system. And we will continue to work day in and day out to add more documents and to review and make public the ones that are there.
Any questions for Director Kleiner?
I have a question.
No, I don't.
Director Kleiner, what will happen with the paper documents once they're being digitalized, I guess? Is that, and what happens with the paper ones?
So for right now, we will continue to have the property record files. So the property record files that are held within our vault. If the normal process was something that would go into the property record file, it will still continue to do so. The idea is and as we are trained and we learned the DocuWare system, it's incredibly easy to use. I mean, at a touch, you can either search for a document, or you can search by the file or by the address. So it really is more convenient to locate a document. And then there's other paper forms that, at least statutorily, we will remain with the paper copy and keep it on file for present.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes.
Just a general comment. I believe most property record files are permanent records, and under New Hampshire law, a permanent record has to be retained either as microfilm or paper. So it can't be disposed of even once it's been digitized. It can be moved off-site, but you need that recovery document to be available. So.
All right. Unfinished business. There is a motion for reconsideration that has to be made. Is there a motion to reconsider the abatement list of 2021 denials that consisted of 26 properties?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, so now the original motion is before us to approve the abatement list. So there needs to be an amendment. There are 5 properties, I guess, current, that are on the list that should not have been included, and they would be 230 Amherst Street, 310 Daniel Webster Highway, 600 Amherst Street, 310 Daniel Webster Highway, and 310 DW Highway. So the first 310 is the Dayton Hudson Corporation. The second one is CTL Propco 1 LLC, and the third one is the Pheasant Lane Mall FB LLC. So I guess it would be appropriate to make an amendment to the main motion to delete those 5 properties. Is somebody willing to make that amendment, that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Why are
Seeing,
they being taken off? Tell the public. I want to know. How could you know, sitting in a public meeting and not saying anything?
okay, let's vote on the amendment first. Okay, so all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, the motion is amended. They're in litigation. Okay. So all those in favor of the motion as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right. Public comments. So we have reached the portion of the meeting that allows for public comment. I would remind members of the public that there is a 5-minute time limit per speaker, and that proper decorum on the part of each speaker is expected. Is there anybody who wants to address the board this morning?
What happened to new business items? Why are
We have Laura Colquhoun.
Just a second.
My name is Laura Cajon at 30 Greenwood Drive. I want to know where Vision stands on doing an audit on the current land use. That was mentioned in the original meeting that it would be looked into. What is the status of that?
And do you have anything else, Mrs. Colquhoun?
I'm asking a question, I just expect an answer.
Right, well, the thing is, it's a comment period. It's not a question and comment period, it's a comment period. So the only thing I can
Well-
say is that we can look into that and someone can get back to you.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Are the new business items being done before public comment or not?
There's no new business.
There's abatements to be approved or denied by Jessica Marchand and Jennifer Zins. Are they not being done? I'm just trying to figure it out. I wanted to hear the whole meeting, and then I'll make comment in case I want to make comment.
Okay, you're right. Okay, it was left off the agenda.
It's on my agenda.
We get a new agenda when we came in. Is that,
Yeah, and
My agenda downloaded 20 minutes ago has government, new business items, Kim Kleiner abatements, Jessica Marchand abatements, Jennifer Zins abatement. They're all on, and they're in my packet. So I don't know what you have that I have that's different.
you know, they've been removed.
Yes.
Right, so administration decided to remove them apparently at the last minute,
Okay.
for whatever valid reasons that they have. Okay, so as I said, there's no new business. Is there anybody else that would care to comment?
Yes.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. A couple things on the vision update. I had asked about legislation regarding income and expenses for businesses to mandate that, because most other New England, I think all other New England states require that form to be done. New Hampshire, it's optional. And Mr. Torello stated that they are entering the data from the business and expense forms. I'd like to know how many gave data. Usually it's low, like 10%. So could we find out how many of these businesses provided data to the appraisal company? That would be interesting to know, because it's information that can be fed for legislative change. The other thing is, my general sense is I'm opposed to the extension by the DRA, but I'm not hardly opposed. But I do want to understand something. Letters are being mailed out on around August 17th, which is what KRT did. It was a little bit later. Everyone got a letter with your new assessment. But at the same time, the preliminary database was posted on the website to show all the property data. Am I correct that the preliminary database will be posted as well? And I just want to make certain that happens. I don't mind if obviously, when I wrote final numbers, that is going to be reflective of any changes made from the 10% or so of people who come out to contest their valuation or say something wasn't right on their card. I would anticipate that will happen. So we know there'll be some changes. But also, the general opinion of the city was any major changes were supposed to be handled through an abatement. And we know that that was not complied with in 2018. So I don't know what's going to be done this round. But am I correct that the preliminary database will be posted like it was for KRT at the end of August? And if the letters go out on August 17th, the database will be posted preliminarily with the residential and the commercial assessments, so we have the big swath of data to look at to get an idea. I also very strongly disagree with the fact that we can't make any statements about how these assessments have moved with Mr. Torello. I think they did a really poor job today presenting. They provided less information with detail than they did 2 months ago. He had charts that showed the various property groups and the movements. And when Ms. Kleiner says we can't make blanket statements and we have to be careful, that's exactly what the mayor did in the May 15th budget meeting. He spoke about the shift between commercial and residential properties being, existing somewhere on the order of 5%, but he couldn't say what. He made the statement that residential property taxes will go up. He didn't say all of them, but he clearly had information from communication with Vision on this shift in values due to residential and commercial properties. And I sit here today with an update and they say nothing. If the mayor can put out blanket statements, then we're entitled to have some detail. Just some detail. So if there isn't going to be the preliminary database put out, I'm going to write to the DRA today and say, please don't approve this extension if they're going to give us nothing. At least KRT gave us something. And hold them to the deadline of releasing numbers. And I'm just opposed to seeing the administration, answer first of all, I ask questions and I ask them to the board. I wrote you an email and I asked 2 months ago if I could speak to you about an issue. I received no response back as the chair. I asked 2 weeks ago or last week if I could get the address of an abatement you discussed in non-public session. I received no response. I come to these meetings and so often you read into the record that you expect common courtesy, decency, common sense to be employed by the citizens who take the microphone. And yet when citizens reach out to you, to me there's no common courtesy, decency, or common sense to respond. Just respond. Information received. Somebody will get back to you. I waited 2 weeks to get these questions answered, and I have to say I'm not fully satisfied with the answers, but I only got them today. And I sent my questions to you. And then I spoke them in the meeting. And I wish there had been an opportunity to ask a few questions of Vision, because I think the income statements is worth asking. I think making very certain that we understand what we're getting delivered on August 17th is worth asking. And I am very concerned when I read the non-public minutes that you went into non-public session to discuss an abatement. RSA 91A, for reasons for non-public session, specifically states that abatements cannot be discussed in non-public session. Property tax abatements are not considered litigation or negotiations and cannot be discussed in non-public session. They are public matters. That's actually tagged on to, I think, item E, under 91A:3 exemptions, non-public session meetings. And I'm very sensitive to that because you discussed my abatement in non-public session. You had a meeting with legal about it. Then you denied me the opportunity to speak to you. You came in here, Dan Hansberry, in 2019, seemed to read a statement about my conduct, my behavior, my difficult personality, and why the abatement should be based on what KRT said and nothing that Mrs. and Mrs. Ortolano said. And you guys voted not to reduce the abatement to a level that I ultimately received the lower level from the BTLA and won that appeal. And all of that was done because you were able to meet in non-public session. And I'm very suspect of this legal team because they're very retaliatory. Whose abatement are you talking about in non-public session? Who don't they like that they want to screw over like they screwed over me? Why are you unable to sit in a public meeting and address an abatement? If you need legal counsel, just like the Board of Aldermen does, have legal counsel here and say, hey, we're concerned this abatement's been filed multiple times, we're not certain it's right, what's your take on this? That's public information. And I really oppose abatements. Appeals are different. They're legal matters. Abatements are not. So I hope I get an answer to that, but again, I emailed you and didn't even get a response that it's being looked into. Don't make demands on the public to practice courtesy and decency when you yourself do not do that. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would care to comment? All right. And I would listen closely to the words of reasoning going into non-public session, but are there comments by board members?
No.
No.
Okay. So I move to go into non-public, is there a motion to go into non-public session for two reasons? First, to discuss matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of this board unless such person requests an open meeting. This exemption shall extend to include any application for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of a fee, fine, or other levy if based on inability to pay a property of the applicant pursuant to RSA 91-A:2 Roman numerals dash, let's see, let me do that. RSA 91-A:3 Roman numeral 2 parenthetical C. Second, excuse me, under 91-A:3 Roman numeral 2 parenthetical L for the consideration of legal advice provided by legal counsel, either in writing or orally, to one or more members of the public body, even where legal counsel is not present.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I will call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Let the record show that we have entered non-public at 9:42 a.m.
I will confirm we're off the air.
Okay, thank you. Okay.